Welcome to Season 2 of the Cultural Cultivators podcast by Belite Creative and Cultivate Labs, where we delve into various aspects of film culture and speak with authors, leaders, entrepreneurs, and creators who are shaping and pushing the boundaries of their respective fields. So join us as we cultivate a greater appreciation for the beauty and complexity of the film experience. Follow us on all social media platforms at Belite Creative or on Instagram at cultural.cultivators. Creative and cultivators are both with a K.
As a member of the diaspora, yes, I am American, but first and foremost, I am proud to be Filipino. In mainstream media, Filipino food has been anointed the next big thing for what feels like decades. I'm here to say that Filipino food has been here for a long time and it's here to stay. I've seen how predominantly white institutions fail you in higher education, in the workplace, and the upper echelons of the food world. No matter what, the Filipino community has always provided spaces where we support and take care of each other. Thank you to the Filipino journalists, chefs, writers, librarians, bookstore owners, organizers, and my friends in New York, Stockton, San Jose, and all over the world who have uplifted my work. That's the kind of validation I hold the closest to my heart. I started writing Mayumu when I was in a full-blown quarter-life crisis, and a beautiful cookbook came out of it. I hope for a future where you won't be discredited for your youth or for being one of the only women of color in the room. The myth of individual exceptionalism tells us that society values you only if you are the best person standing. But my journey has taught me that you must always advocate and uplift each other to survive. Stopping the erasure of culture can only be done as a collective. This award, so sorry. This award is for my first generation friends making so many sacrifices with limited resources to create art. This is for people like myself working multiple jobs to make their dreams come true in creative fields where there are virtually no protections for freelancers. We shouldn't have to fight so hard for a seat at the table, but I see you and I'm rooting for you. Lastly, I want to shed light on the terrible genocide happening right now. U.S. imperialism has definitely cast a long shadow on the Philippines' history into the present, and we cannot look away while the Western war machine is actively claiming thousands of lives in Gaza today. Thank you so much.
Abi Balingit is a baker and author based in Brooklyn, New York. Her debut cookbook, Mayumu, Filipino American Desserts Remixed, won the 2024 James Beard Emerging Voice Award in Books. When she's not working full-time at a live music company, she's running a baking blog called the Dusky Kitchen. In this conversation, Abi describes the night she won her James Beard Award and the extra steps she had to take to contextualize the moment for her parents.
And I FaceTimed them right after the awards and stuff, and I was so scared that they were going to turn off the stream because I lost the thing that I was nominated for originally. And then I remember just hoping that they were just would watch other, I think Irwan Feature Media was also nominated. Please keep watching in case Abby Marquez wins or something. And so I think for them, they were so excited and they're this is such a big deal. I didn't realize, but now I understand this is the Oscars of food, right? I'm yeah, it is kind of. And so I think now they kind of get it, even if it took a while. I think it took a big thing like this to kind of shift to the tide. So I'm really grateful for it too.
Also in this conversation, we talk about how she tackles perfectionism with her work, learning the collaborative process of making a book after coming from the world of DIY or do-it-yourself, and how sentimental trinkets are the secret to time travel. You can follow Abi on Instagram and TikTok at the Dusky Kitchen. All right, thank you so much, Abi, for joining us remotely in New York.
I'm so happy to be here.
So we always start our podcast with this first question with all of our guests, and it is, which ancestor would you like to call into this conversation to help ground us today?
My Auntie Flor, who was living in San Jose, she passed a couple of years ago, but I have always regretted that the book didn't come out in time for her to read it, and she was so huge in my upbringing of going to Auntie Flor's house all the time, and I've been thinking about her a lot lately because it was her birthday in June. So it's heavy, but it's also like I feel light when I think about all the times I've had with her, and like everything that we've done together was so special. So this is for Auntie Floor.
Oh, I love that. I love when we can ground and connect a specific person with our creative endeavors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such a beautiful thing. So before we even get to the book, I know there was the blog that came first, the Dusky Kitchen. Can you tell us about your background and what inspired the blog?
Yeah, so I am not a stranger to blogging. I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad. I graduated 2017, so go Bears. And during that time, I wrote for the Daily Cal, which was the newspaper. And I started my first year there doing blogs specifically, so it was like the Daily Clog. And, I carried those skills over. Even once I graduated, I did not have a job lined up, which I was freaking out about. And in hindsight, I shouldn't have been freaking out so much, but I was. And so I was unemployed for like the first 3 months out of college. And then during that time, I was like, oh, I really want to work in live music or, just something in entertainment. I wrote a whole different blog. It was called Hotline Bling It. So that if you see me on a different social, that's my OG handle. But I also had a blog associated with that name where I interviewed independent artists of color that I really admired, and I'd reach out to them and just ask them a few questions. And yeah, I was online for so long, and it felt like the only thing I could do to kind of tangibly like meet new people and also learn their stories. I think that did honestly help me get my first job at Bands in Town, which is this live music company, and I'm still working there now, but that was my first start into that. Fast forward a little bit to 2020, which is when I started the Dusky Kitchen. COVID was really rough, and it's even still really rough. And so I think about quarantine as a very specific kind of like, I guess for me, creative, reset, I guess is what I'd like to call it, because I knew that I was so kind of sad. I think everyone was sad. And so I kind of wanted something as like an outlet of all the baking that I've done and all the like fun kind of things that I would choose as like a hobby, but I wanted to share that with other people. I didn't realize it would turn into something that was so Filipino American focused. A lot of the baking I was doing before this time was very much just other people's recipes, just like Alison Roman's like chocolate chunk cookie shortbread. And so I think that, feeling very nostalgic for family, for the people that I missed a lot, especially back home in California, the Dusky Kitchen was honestly more for me as a way to like connect with other people, especially people in the food community too, not just other Filipinos, but it was so nice to kind of have all those types of communities together online. I was baking in my shared kitchen. I lived in an apartment with 3 other girls. I went to Cal with, and we had very little light in that kitchen and only like one window where any light could come out of. So I just called it the Dusky Kitchen. And at the time, also when I thought of the blog back in 2019, I was working full-time in the office like in Manhattan. And so by the time I'd get back around like 6 or even sometimes 7, that was the only time I could bake, was honestly near dusk. So that's why it's called a Dusky Kitchen.
And that's also like golden hour.
I know. I feel like I ideally wish it was more like golden hour. Sometimes it was like more like twilight-ish. Like it felt like it was dark. It was so dark and like just literally so dark. And I think that was tough for me because I love like good natural light, especially for when you're making, blog content or just like anything or like photos. It's tough for me when I'm like, oh God. But I made the most out of it. And I think that was like the spirit of the blog, and still is the spirit of me, honestly. I'm still making it work right now. And I mean, it's like 4 years later, and I have been on hiatus with that blog. But I do feel like I am still the Dusky Kitchen, and I'm still figuring out what that means for the future. But sometimes like I get emails or like, hi Dusky or hi Dusty. I'm like, I it's not my first name, but I think either the bots or whoever is just as confused, but I am in theory still like the Dusky Kitchen online and everything.
Growing up in a Filipino household, how did that influence your culinary style and the recipes you chose to actually put in your cookbook?
Both my parents, they're from Pampanga, and they immigrated here, I would say, early 90s. I lived in San Jose, also then moved to Stockton when I was 6. And so a lot of my extended family on my mom's side is still in San Jose, still in the South Bay area. Up until I was 6 years old, we were living in like one house. There was 13 of us, I would say maybe. I'm like, let me count it out. But I had like cousins, like 2 cousins, aunt, uncle, 2 other uncles, my Lolo, my like Lola, like there was a lot of people in this one-story house. It wasn't like a 3-level house. It was like I was sleeping in the same room with my mom, my dad, my 2 sisters. And like even though I was really young at the time, like I never really thought of it as like a bad thing. I was like, oh, it's so cool. We just like, it's like Full House, like the TV show, but not as nice of a house. But it was so nice and special to like honestly grow up in a multi-generational household. And I still think about how that really has like influenced the food that I enjoy, just because a lot of the times like it wasn't just my mom and my dad cooking, it was just like also my aunt, my uncle, sometimes my lolo. I think I still cherish like a lot of like really good memories of just like eating an abundance of a lot of things. And like a lot of my like core food memories growing up were centered around like parties and party food and like, pancit for my birthday. And I think that a lot of it, at least that I remembered, was so, I never felt like I was missing out on anything else that was like very like quote unquote like let's say like American. I definitely had like those parties from like friends that had like pizza parties only. But I think for a Filipino party, I just remembered so much just amazing food, like in aluminum trays, like all types of food, and like dinuguan. And like I think what my parents and my family taught me is to be very adventurous in the kitchen, regardless of where you are, and to give everything a try at least once. And my dad would always say this a lot to me, is like, you can't afford to be maselan, which is like, translates to kind of picky, or, you can't choose too much. And I think that helped me, at least now, even though now I can say no to things, it's like, at least I've tried it at least once. And so there is a lot of privilege in just having, so much food around the table and so much life around the table that I think just breathes into my food, regardless of like if I'm pulling from other cultures for the flavor profile I'm looking for.
What has that creative process been like when you develop your recipes? Because it's not just the traditional, Filipino desserts. It's definitely Filipino American Desserts Remixed.
I always think of American as such like a global identity, just because of the nature of like all the different people like we grew up with and were around, and the people that I constantly get to meet, and the restaurants you get to try that are sometimes outside of Filipino like places. And I think that's just so special to have that kind of upbringing, and diversity is something to celebrate, in my opinion. And so whenever I think of recipes, sometimes it is like as simple as like, I love that one dessert at this restaurant, and I would love to translate some of those flavors into some other form or something else. And so I file away a lot of textures or like fun, like, oh, that was a beautiful decoration on top of beautiful edible flowers. Or I think there's always something to pull from something or someone and feel inspired by. And so that's kind of like the remix aspect of my recipes. It's just so much of like something familiar turning into something completely new, and combining maybe 2 or 3 familiar features into a whole new kind of dessert. I feel very much inspired by a lot of things, and I try to jam pack a lot into one dessert sometimes, but I never think that's a bad thing if it all works out. And I think a lot of people have such palates where I don't think you can doubt that anyone can, like, if it's too much for someone, doesn't mean that like it's too much for everyone else, kind of a thing. Because sometimes I think that might be a critical feedback I might get about certain desserts, but I really give everyone the benefit of the doubt of like, don't knock it till you try it, like my dad would tell me. So I think the same thing for everyone else too.
Yeah, definitely being open-minded, I think, is a strength, whether you're a chef or an artist.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I feel like even the journey to be so open-minded can be kind of long. Like sometimes some things can feel too scary to try, but then at some point you're just like, okay, you try one thing, you try the next, and it's just like a domino effect of you can do whatever now because you've tried it once.
Now, that's so funny because I know in your blog you talk about being a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So how does that perfectionist sort of persona also influence you and impact your work?
Oh my gosh, when I said that I was a perfectionist a long time ago, it still stands. I have not decreased my perfectionist tendencies at all. It gets the best of me sometimes when I really want to start a new project, for example, or like I am so excited about a recipe I want to try to make, but it's tough when I think I am my biggest worst enemy, where it's the similar thing of like, oh, like it's too dusky to work in these conditions, or I need all the natural light. And yet I'm still doing that, and I'm still have to like, work under not like suboptimal kind of things that are happening or things in my life that overshadow the creative happiness I get out of doing something, even if it's not 100% the vision that I thought it was going to be. And I think that disconnect of expectation reality can be really tough on anyone who is just trying to do something that they're passionate about. And I'm still working through how to not be such perfectionist when I actually do something. I think the habit of doing it constantly is the best thing for you, because when I was more regular about writing on my blog and even in a newsletter, it really helped me just feel like comfortable, like even if I had a typo, and even if I was like really disappointed in myself that I had a typo and it went out with a typo, the end of the world did not happen because you had a newsletter with a typo. And so sometimes it's that kind of thing of like, I just have to keep at it and keep doing it and push on. And I am currently facing that kind of upheaval, and something I want to do now too. So thank you for the reminder that I should take my own advice sometimes.
Sometimes we just need those reminders to help us get out of our own way.
Yeah, exactly. I am putting myself in a box, and it's taking a lot to get out of it sometimes when your expectations for yourself are so high. And maybe it's good to have high expectations. It's not a bad thing, though. It's still a good thing to care a lot.
It is. But also, like, I think about why do we have such high expectations? And sometimes it's a balance of this like pressure from capitalism.
Real.
And this hustle culture and the stuff we see on social media, this other lens of fake perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
Like very curated success and perfectionism versus like this whole hustle culture we're still trying to get out of. I think like you said, the pandemic really helped a lot of people to reset and reground, myself included, and really like question, why do I do this to myself?
Wait, that's so real. Oh, like snaps.
Right? Like, is it this expectation of me to be better than what I was? Or is this expectation coming from a place of, if I don't do more, I'm not good enough?
Oh, I mean, those are two very real like reasons and questions. And sometimes I think in retrospect that like I want so much for myself because I know I can do this much at my very best. And I forget that at this time, I maybe not be at my very best in other aspects of my life. And so it's really hard to disconnect from like, oh, this was that period of time where I was, hyper productive and like so, creatively ambitious. And it's not to say that those periods of time don't come back, they don't like come back in folds. But it's just, I think I like forget that you do your best with what you can at that certain time of your life. And when you can do better, you can do even like the best you've ever done, it's like it's hard because you're putting yourself on a pedestal. And I'm still guilty of that, especially with the aspect of capitalism making like production. You have to do everything fast because people's attention span is low apparently, and like no one can like take long form content, as people say, or like all these things that are like can't be untrue. It's just the fact of the matter is like capitalism makes us churn out more content than sometimes we're ready to produce, and even calling it content is crazy because it feels like commodifying our own art and work, and I hate it. It's horrible.
But this, I think, it's an important conversation to have, right? As creatives and artists and people who, we're also marketing, right?
Oh, I know. And I do feel like that's where I've been, honestly, in my journey. I've done everything DIY for so long. And the book is one example where it wasn't just me. It was like I had an editor, I had a photography team, I had, a cookbook stylist. And all those things were so important to the success of the book. And I value that experience, even though even now when I pursue projects where it's just, mostly just me, it's tough because I think you're the only person who can hold yourself accountable for those kinds of situations when it's just an independent solo project. And so I'm still learning how best to like approach, I guess, creativity and art and all that stuff without it being tainted by like, I could sell this for X amount of money if I wanted to. it's just tough because we also have to like put food on our tables, and like I think that has like really messed with my mind of like baking was just my hobby for so long, and then in my mid-20s it turned into something else, and I don't know, I'm still grappling with that kind of transition and change.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all are, but I think more people are less aware, right?
Yeah.
Of these conditions we were born into as far as capitalism is concerned. So
I know.
I actually want to give pause and I want to give you a hand and clap because I used to bake in my 20s.
Yeah.
I don't anymore. I feel like I'm too busy. But
Real.
I had a real joy baking and taking my time to, perfect a recipe and seeing the results, and to see you take something that you love so much and then create this cookbook for others and then get the success you have with. Congratulations on the James Beard Award, FYI.
Oh my God, thank you. Thank you.
I see all that. And to me, I feel like it's a perfect balance of doing what you love and having that recognition and success and sort of balancing both worlds, as someone from an outsider looking in. So I do want to give you credit for what you've done. And one of my favorite things about you, and this is why I was like, we need to have Abi on this podcast.
Oh, Nicole, you're so sweet.
Was your acceptance speech.
Oh, thank you for watching it.
It was so inspiring. And I was just like, afterwards, I was like crying and I was like clapping and snapping.
Thank you.
And for those that weren't able to watch it, I just wanted to ask if you can speak about what inspired you to say those things that you said in your acceptance speech and take that time in a room full of I don't know how many people were there, but I'm assuming hundreds of people in the food industry, other chefs, people who represent the James Beard Award. What was the inspiration for that speech?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like for me, I felt like this is my one opportunity. I don't know if I'll get this opportunity again, kind of thing. It's like a once in a lifetime, maybe kind of experience to talk about myself, but also the community that I represent. And, to only be one of a couple Filipinos winning James Beard Awards and even being nominated. It's tough because I know we have so much talent and so much amazing people in this community, and I felt like I needed to take this opportunity to at least say this is not just a win for me, but it's a win for everyone else and the people that I worked with on this book and in my life. And coming from a background of always kind of being around Filipinos and celebrating that in community, especially in college, I was really involved in the Filipino community at Cal, and I think it helped me become the person that I am now. And I really wanted people to understand that, especially for places that are so predominantly white creative spaces, especially in the arts, where at least for me being first generation, it's been hard to kind of break that barrier, especially even just internally with my family, just be understanding what I'm doing with my life in theory. And so it's I wanted to put that into the speech, but also talk about Palestine, of course, and the solidarity that I feel with the Palestinian people, with our past and our histories intertwined as well. And so I think there's so much to talk about, but I knew I had 2 minutes or something to spare. I felt really impassioned about the things that I was saying, and I'm so grateful it resonated with you, and I hope people just understood all the things that is kind of wrong with the way that the world works kind of against us and people of color and marginalized people. It's just rough. And I hope that it changes things, being in that space for other people as well. So that was the speech for me. It was very harrowing. I was there on stage and it was bright lights. I couldn't even see people. I was just speaking from my phone, my notes app, and I'm really glad it worked out in the end.
I think it was so powerful, and also just someone who was trying so hard for 20 years to break into the industry and it not happening the way I expected it to. During COVID, it was a big awakening of, oh, this industry actually wasn't built for someone like me to win awards and be recognized and have my shows picked up. And so for you to speak on it in the food industry, you know, industry that's completely different, I felt seen in a lot of ways. And like, yes, Abby.
Oh, Nicole, thank you. No, but I respect that, and I see you and I see my friends, especially in other fields too, that I'm just like, I can't believe like how difficult it is. And when you're in it, you feel very isolated sometimes if you're not talking to other people. And I realize like the key to equity and access is literally talking to other people and seeing how much they're making. Like, who are you talking to? Like, what content can I talk to get into this thing? It was so much of that. And like the success of the James Beard Award, it just feels like something that didn't come out of nowhere. It was like, oh, like I started this blog, I started that writing proposal for the cookbook, and the only people that signed off on it for a while were mostly Filipino people that I reached out to on Twitter that didn't know me very well, but still like advocated for me and my work. And so I still am very grateful for all those people who have always stood by me, and the people that you still have yet to meet that can hopefully gain something from your experiences. So starting from the bottom, literally, like I understand how hard it is in every single industry. It's so difficult to make it. And so I'm very grateful to at least shed light on that.
Us doing this work in silos is not going to help the work get out. It's really about connecting and creating our own communities around the food industry, around the entertainment industry, around whatever industry, fashion industry, and really connecting with folks so that we can start creating our own tables.
Yeah, because sometimes the tables that are already existing just are not enough. They're not big enough.
They're not big enough. They're not meant for us. They're, you know, rooted in toxic patriarchal capitalist BS.
Yes, absolutely. It's just not okay. And I think that was a reckoning with COVID that I felt like so many industries, especially in food and especially also like in film, was tough because it's like you see yourselves as so expendable the way that society treats you, because you're like, oh, like they're, you know, like essential workers, but not in the sense of getting enough money for your work or any of that to survive. And it's like there's so many inequities in all these industries that just came to light during COVID that have always been wrong and got increasingly bad during COVID. And so it's awful that the pandemic happened, but it's also like enlightening to see like, okay, you know, what can we do now that we're 4 years into it? And I think there's still a lot of work to be done. And it can be daunting in that sense, but I think it's also great that we're at least now being able to talk to each other more, at least in person, to get things done and to get that work done that needs to be done to at least, you know, further everyone up. Like, I hate to see the 99% not winning. Like, it's awful. Hopefully that still inspires people that we can create the change that we want to create and not to just rely on, like, higher powers to do it for us, because I'm not doing it.
Exactly.
I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket for sure.
Yeah, it's really like they said in the 60s, people power.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to ask too, because I know there's a bunch of folks that listen from all over the world who are aspiring cooks, food writers, bloggers. What advice would you have for those folks who want to share maybe their own cultural heritage through food or their own experiences?
My biggest advice is to be confident into putting the work that you want out into the world. I would not have my book without putting my stuff on Twitter or on Instagram, on pictures of what I was making. Even if it wasn't, again, like perfect in that sense that I wanted it to be, I still think it was enough to give people an idea of my point of view of who I am. Don't ever discredit yourself or think that's not enough for someone, because it can be, and it always is. And I think that's just like the perception of yourself really can keep you from, you know, achieving what you want to do. And so I hope people just, you know, embrace their full selves online or wherever you feel comfortable to do that kind of work, because a lot of people say, oh, I could never do this, or, you know, I'm not like a real baker, I don't like have a cookbook or all these things. I'm like, no, like everyone is like a real baker, real writer, even if you're not published by a big printing press or publication, you know. So I think that was the biggest thing I carried when I first started my blog, and in now, like, into the work that I do, if it's a byline for a big magazine or if it's, you know, my own book, those are experiences no one can take away from you, and no one can discredit that kind of work that you're doing, because you're doing it for the love of writing and the love of doing things for yourself. So it's very important to own your work in all aspects of it, just like, you know, financially, emotionally, like you should own yourself. And I think that really speaks volumes to what you can do in creative industries for sure.
I love that advice. I think the last 2 podcasts we've had, it's a lot about like owning your work, doing your art for you, right? And
yeah,
there, of course, there's the pressure, like you said, to have something to sell and create things to sell. But also when you ground yourself in your work, it's so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, I agree. And then the money and all that stuff will come with time, I guess. And like in my experience too, it's like, okay, like if I kept thinking about this in numbers of like if this will perform X well or engagement and clicks, it takes the fun out of it, honestly. And if you're happy with it, that's the only opinion that should matter. And everything else is like a bonus if other people like it. It is my opinion on putting out work that you are passionate about.
Was it a surprise how successful you got once the book was out?
Yeah, like absolutely, 100%. Like I think that a lot of my thinking going into writing this book or even getting it published at all was very much underdog mentality. I was like, I don't know if this is going to get published. I'm just doing it. Just, you know, who knows what will happen kind of a thing. And so every part of like my journey thus far has felt like, wow, that's amazing that even happened. Or like people making your recipes at home. It's always like humbling and amazing. And like, I still don't think that feeling goes away as the days and the months, and it's been over a year since the book came out, but I still see people making, you know, certain recipes from the book or excited about the book. And that's the beauty of writing and of especially books as a whole. They're so like physical and so tangible. I'm so honored every time I visit a friend's house or someone's house and I see my book on their shelf, and it's just a part of you. It just lives outside of yourself forever, and that's so amazing. And like, yeah, all the things that I've gone to do, like every interview I've gone to do, every single type of situation I've been in that I can't even, I'm like speechless. Like there are no words to describe like how weird it is that something in my mind has taken off in this way. And so, yeah, I'm so happy. I'm so surprised and shocked that it is resonating with people, even outside the Filipino community, which is amazing. And I never thought that would happen.
And that's actually how I discovered you and your work, was during the, you know, that first year. I just kept seeing your cookies on everyone.
Oh, that's great. I love to hear it. That's amazing thing. I know, I feel like I flooded timelines. I was on Twitter. I was reposting on Instagram. I am reposting. I think the thing with that is you just have to be like shameless and like you just gotta like promote yourself. I think for me, I was just like, what I do whenever someone tags me, I share on my story so I can have it kind of forever. Because, you know, it disappears after 24 hours. And I just feel like a hoarder. I'm like, I want to remember this back in the day. Like some people made my recipes, you know, back in the, like when in my heyday or my prime, like when I'm like, I don't know, hopefully other things are coming beyond this. But I was like, it feels so good. And it's amazing to see. I love it so much.
So after you won the James Beard, did your family and parents, did they finally get like what a big deal this is?
Yeah, I know, it took so long. I feel like I've been on record saying my parents don't, and to their credit, I don't blame them. I even didn't know what it took to write a book until actually writing the book. And I FaceTimed them right after the awards and stuff, and I was so scared that they were going to turn off the stream because I lost like the thing that I was nominated for originally, but I won a whole different award for Emerging Voice. And then I remember just like hoping that they were just like, you know, would watch other, like, I think Irwan, like Feature Media was also like nominated. Like, please, like, keep watching in case like Abby Marquez wins or something. And so like, I think for them, they were so excited and they're like, this is such a big deal. I didn't realize, but now like I understand, like this is like the Oscars of food, right? And I'm like, yeah, it is kind of. And so I think now they kind of get it, even if it took a while. I think it took a big thing like this to kind of shift to the tide. So I'm really grateful for it too.
And we can't blame our parents. I think the same thing for my mom. She's always like, so when are you going to win an Oscar? And I'm like, Mom.
I know. These are the only metrics that I guess, like, it's so hard because that's the most visible kind of metric, right? It's like an award or like a big fancy thing, and it should be just the act of doing it. That's enough. But of course, we understand.
Yes.
It's our parents.
We love our parents. They come from a good place.
Yes, always.
But yes, again, this is why I felt like it was so important to do a podcast for my son like this, because for him to hear, it's the metrics of just doing it. doing the work and showing up every day and getting over our perfectionism and things need to be X, Y, and Z, and just saying, you know what? I'm just going to cook, or I'm just going to write, or I'm just going to create and see what flows through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I never hope to like, like when you're cringing at like your past self, or like, oh, it's so cringe, and like you see yourself in the past. I hope to not feel that way as much anymore, because I almost like miss that person I was when I was so naive about things, and like I was like, oh yeah, like I'm just doing it, it's fine if only 10 people read this, it's fine. I think channeling that energy is so good, like no matter where you are at in your career, because I feel like you constantly just need to be humbled all the time, just to be like, just because like you did this one thing doesn't mean you can't continue to do more things. And so I am, the past 4 years have been huge, but I'm really excited about like the future too. And, you never discredit yourself, even though you could in the past, not anymore. I hope to stop doing that.
And speaking of upcoming projects or collaborations, is there anything you can share with us that's coming up?
Yeah. So currently I'm working on this short form kind of series called Trinket Dish. So I love little trinkets. I love like a Nick. It's like just like little things, and Hello Kitty and Sunny Angels and all that stuff. But it's hopefully going to be like on Reels or something. And it's just like interviewing friends, kind of like Architectural Digest, open door style, going into their homes, asking them like what this trinket means to you or what your favorite trinkets are. And so that's coming hopefully soon. Like I'm in the thick of working on it, but I hope that fall, winter 2024, 2025 will be the time for me to execute this ideally. I guess you can hold me accountable now that I said it.
Oh my gosh, we're totally doing that.
Yeah, they'll be like, check in with me in December, see if it's quiet on that front, no, it's something horrible has happened.
I love collecting trinkets. I mean, I'm trying not to be, my mom is totally a hoarder, so I'm trying to be hoarder style of it, but I have like an altar, and I have all these trinkets that remind me either of my grandmother that passed away or my dad. He's like, his trinkets are like hummingbirds, anything hummingbirds.
Really? That's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love that. No, I feel like I grew up a lot going to like the San Jose
flea market,
but also like the Great Mall and Easter and the Sanrio stores in like those respective places. And it's tough because I feel like lately I'm so nostalgic for that time, because they were so like tiny, like it didn't have to be expensive for it to be like really important to me. Like it was just like, oh, I love that little sticker pack for 25 cents, or like the little toy that they put on the bag before you leave the store. And I don't know if there's many feelings that I get from anything anymore that don't cost more than $20, to be honest with you. And so it's like, wow, I kind of miss like simpler times. And I hope that trinkets, are very, very much like, it could be anything, and it doesn't have to be expensive for you to love it and have sentimental value. So I'm really excited to explore that topic in depth.
Out of your top of your head, what is your favorite trinket?
Oh, I'm like, let me think. There's so many around, but I think I really love lately, my boyfriend got me this, like those Kinder eggs?
Yes.
Like the ones, so yes, the Kinder eggs with chocolate, and they have like insides like a toy. But one time, many months ago, he got me a Hello Kitty one, of course, and it's like a tiny like Hello Kitty, but it glows in the dark, was the one that we got, like the blind one that we got. And so we just like recharge it in the windowsill, and every time I see it, I'm like, oh, it's like such a thoughtful thing. It wasn't like an anniversary gift, it was just like an everyday, like, oh, I thought of you and I got this for you at the grocery store, kind of a gesture. So I cherish it, and I love seeing it. We say hi to it sometimes. I don't know, I feel like, I always like kind of talk to some of my trinkets too. It's very enlightening, like I think of them all as like my little children.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Yeah, my love language is gifts, so I totally get that.
Yes. No, you get it. And I do feel like it's like when I was also like growing up in a very Catholic, like Filipino household, like my family would always have like the like the little Jesus, like the very, very small baby Jesus everywhere. And I feel like that was like the original Sunny Angel, to be honest. But we are a culture that loves trinkets.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes.
All right, last question. What are you currently geeking over?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I have randomly been getting into like perfume talk. Have you been on that side of TikTok ever? I don't know what it is. I'm also like, my one fragrance I have right now is like Glacé You, which I love. But like there's something really cool about people describing like the top notes, bottom notes, like, and they're just like, oh my god, this smells like a birthday party when I was 7, and the helium, and I'm like, wait a second, and it just piques my curiosity so much. I've literally gone and ordered like a sample set from this one perfume like independent perfume company, because I was so intrigued by like the people's reviews on Perfume Talk about like their experiences smelling this perfume. I've just been so like, I don't know, amazed by like people's descriptors, and like it just like really pulls me in a way that like sensory wise, I'm like, oh, I must smell that or else I will be missing out. If it doesn't smell like it, then I'll be really disappointed. If it wasn't like it's just so interesting that for me, when I gravitate towards content, I don't always want to watch food as much anymore, because I'm so like always in the kitchen making things, and I'm like, I need to focus my energy somewhere else. But it's also an art also making perfume and making fragrances, and so it's really cool to kind of see where that like inspiration goes, because I think smell is also tied to taste, and so it's either way it's always related back to food, so it's cool to kind of see that happen in real time.
Do we see a Dobo cookie perfume in the future?
Oh my god, now you're giving me ideas. And I wish, I was like, if someone is like a Filipino like perfume person, fragrancery, I don't know what they
I don't know the word
I
either.
would be I don't know the words, I know, but I'm like, please tell me more. Like, I would love to collaborate. But yeah, it's always so cool. I love the idea of like just like bottling like memories and fragrance, and like, even though I can't personally do it, and even though I personally don't have like the biggest collection in the world, it's really cool to see people very passionate about it. And I think I like live off of that. I don't know.
That's so funny. I feel like that connects to the trinkets too, because the senses of smell is the sense that connects you like instantaneously to a memory.
Yeah. No, I do feel like this. Do you like, I guess, what are you geeking out over, first of all? And secondly, do you have like a favorite fragrance, or what do you like to wear?
Oh, what am I currently geeking over? Today is my dad's death anniversary.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sorry. My condolences, but also like, I hope it's a healing day for you too.
Thank you. And so I'm currently just geeking over the memory of him and going over like photos and videos.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, sharing and keeping those stories, I think is so important, because it's kind of circling back to our conversation about capitalism and hustle culture. Yeah. This society wants nothing more for us to just keep going, and not really sitting and taking a pause and remembering our milestone moments, our successes, or the things that just keep us going. What is rooting us in our intentions of creating? And one of those biggest intentions for me is my father. And before he passed away, I just spontaneously started recording him on video the last day we were together. And he literally told me, continue to create your art. Don't work for the man. He was such a hippie.
That's so nice. Oh, that's so amazing.
And
that's awesome.
Just keep following your heart. And this is why I moved to New York in the first place. And so I just bring all that up because, one, I'm geeking over just like this memory of him in Golden Gate Park telling me this. And I'm sitting in it today to just keep fueling my intention of creating and connecting with other creatives. And the smell, I think, that I love to wear, it's something that I wore in high school, and I just found it at Marshall's, of all places.
Oh my God, what is it?
It's called She, S-H-I. It comes in like a blue teardrop looking perfume bottle. I don't know who makes it, but I remember finding it I think my cousin wore it in high school. And so I started wearing it, and I found it at Marshall's last 3 months ago. And I was like, oh my gosh.
It reminds you of how you were when you were in high school.
Like the 60-year-old me at Great America trying to meet boys at the arcade.
Oh my God. I love that. But that's so special. I love that. I don't know. I think holding on to memories and holding on to previous versions of yourself is very important, because that's made you who you are, and other people made you who you are as well. So it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Exactly. Well, Abby, I just want to thank you so much I also want to say, I followed you on social media for a while, and I just love how you are unapologetically you and original, and you just express yourself in such a unique and beautiful way. So thank you for being on our podcast, and thank you for sharing your experiences and your stories with us.
No, and thank you so much for also giving the space for so many people like me who I just earnestly are just trying to make it in work, especially in creative fields. And I think it's so special that you're saving this too for your son. And I think this is, it's wild to think of second generation, third generation, fourth generation, Filipinos, because in my whole life, I feel like I've only been surrounded by, my parents and then this, and I feel like it's been nice to kind of see that spirit of openness continue and actually get better over generations that I hope we can witness in our lifetime. But it's beautiful, so thank you so much for this space.
Perfectionism is something many of us grapple with, and from our conversation today, we learned that Abi is no exception. She shared how she can be her own worst enemy, especially when the disconnect between expectation and reality becomes apparent. I think this is common amongst creatives and entrepreneurs. We envision this perfect outcome, but the journey to get there sometimes is rarely smooth, and the pressure to meet our own high standards can sometimes overshadow the joy and satisfaction we derive from our creative work. I think one of the points Abi makes about the importance of regular practice and consistency in overcoming perfectionism is key. This reminds me of something I would also tell my clients, that even when our results are not perfect, the act of creating is what's most important. For instance, when she found she was more regular about writing on her blog and her newsletter, it helped her feel more comfortable, more confident, even when occasional mistakes like typos happen. This is such a powerful reminder that perfection is not the goal. Progress is. The act of creating regularly, even when it's imperfect, helps build our confidence and resilience. And it helps us get out of a state of doing into a state of being. Also, the combination of capitalism and social media often makes us feel like we have to just churn out content quickly because of the perceived low attention spans of our audiences. And this can lead us to prioritize quantity over quality, speed over substance. Abi's words remind us to reclaim our creative process, to focus on the joy and fulfillment that just comes from creating, rather than merely churning out and producing for consumption. Abi's journey reminds me of my own struggles with perfectionism, especially when it comes to my own feature film. I had all these high expectations and goals 4 years ago, like getting into the Sundance filmmaker program, having my movie funded by big name producers, and eventually winning an Oscar. Look, those goals have shifted a lot in the past 4 years, because when I submitted my script and project to Sundance, I actually got to the second round, but ultimately was not accepted as a final filmmaker for their program. It was a devastating hit to my ego, but it was also a turning point. I realized I can't wait around for organizations like Sundance or even Hollywood to make this project a reality. Instead, I understood I had to pivot and create it my own way with the help of my community and my kapwa. I'm happy to say this month, NPR actually released an entire podcast episode on the subject of my film. My uncle, Patrick Saliver, the student civil rights activist who was part of the Third World Liberation Front. And the end goal of my project has now transcended my initial expectations. I'm validating this because NPR has made an entire podcast about this project. And I realized that this project is not just a project anymore. It's my life's work. And any small progress I make on it is a win for me as an artist and a filmmaker. So to sum it up, I think this conversation offers us 3 important lessons. 1, Embrace your imperfections. Regular practice, even when it's imperfect, is more valuable than waiting for perfect conditions. 2, persistence is key. Keep pushing forward, even when it feels challenging. And 3, reclaim your creativity. Don't let external pressures dictate your creativity, and focus on your intentions, bringing more joy into the process. So remember, above all, perfection shouldn't be the goal. Progress is. Just keep creating, keep pushing forward, and most importantly, remember to enjoy the process. You know, like Abby said, the money and the external accolades will come later, but first, ground in your why. You can find more information on Abby and all of her work at theduskykitchen.com. Cultural Cultivators is hosted by me, Nicole Saliver. You can follow me at Kindred Capois or follow us at cultural.cultivators on Instagram. And if you want to listen to the NPR episode about me and my work, you can find it on the Inheriting Podcast. This podcast is co-produced by John Reyes, Kindred Capois, and Belay Creative, and it is a product of Cultivate Labs. Stay in touch at belaycreative.org.